Yeah, Bennett, it's great to meet you, man. Where are you located?
Yeah, San Jose to be exact.
Okay, San Jose. Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, I'm in Kansas City, so we're all like humming and you can feel the energy in the air, so we're ready.
Right. I know
So,
what you mean, man.
yeah, it's wild, man. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to diving into the album. Um, and before we get into it, I want to know this. Surviving that pandemic 4.5 years ago or so was a big deal for musicians, for all of us. We had to change so much. How
Yeah.
much of living through that time period has reverberated into this album and to the way that you're living life today?
Well, it certainly acted as a moment of reflection. I think first off for me, like I even created an album prior to this that was released in 2022, and those songs where I think were really derived from the periods of reflection, and even just like the tenor of society and things that were going on like around the country and around the globe at that time. Um, because like what was it, maybe 3 months, I want to say, right after everything shut down and like gigs went away and events and all that, right? Public gatherings were basically kaput. Then you had the murder of George Floyd, and then that sparked just a huge, just like contrast to that. Like everybody's gathering because we're marching and we're fighting for change and social justice, um, and then just a whole lot of things in that movement started to percolate. Um, so a lot of music that I wrote stemmed from points from that like early side of the pandemic even, and in a way it kind of went from being like uh, sort of people in fear and not certain about what their life was going to like now progress along to be. It kind of turned from that to then being like, hey, there's like bigger things, there's more important parts of our life right now that like have to be addressed. And it's like, and it's having to deal with like the treatment of human beings kind of thing like that, right? So um it's for me as like an artist, like I think it really helped with that. And even to the point of like where I wasn't doing performances and gigging, right? Like because these venues weren't open. It kind of served as a way to take an overview of my value and start to consider like, okay, now that like there's not an abundance of gigs happening, like when these things do come back, like what do I really want to say yes to and commit myself to? What is like feeding my path as an artist best? What's best for me financially and for my family? Um, yeah, all these factors kind of got taken into greater consideration because of things slowing down.
For sure. So let's talk about the latest album. It'll always work out. Give me an
Yeah,
idea of how the creative forces turned it into reality. How did this happen?
I'll say a lot of the tunes on the album got their juice from them being written and then tried out on the bandstand. Because I've done things in the opposite before where it's been recorded and then it has yet to be like played publicly yet, right? But there was a lot of actually material in this that got the live treatment first. And so when I played these songs, wrote them, played them, had them in an ensemble setting, sometimes just had them solo and played them that way as just solo piano. Um, for me, I got to really understand how they were resonating with other musicians and then how a crowd, how listeners were absorbing them. So going about it that way, I felt like served as a really good measuring stick for where I was in songwriting and composition, and just overall like where my growth as an artist and where I wanted to go directionally, like what I wanted to emphasize in my music and like sort of how I wanted to keep uh, extending on what I was doing with jazz overall. And so like I was saying, like, so for the most part, there's music like that. There's a song on there in particular that was actually commissioned work from San Jose Jazz. I don't know if you're familiar with that initiative, and that, like, they throw a couple of big festivals each year too in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Um, so I was selected as one of their Jazz Aid Fund recipients in 2022.
Yeah.
And so all the recipients were given a grant, and then as in fulfillment of that, there was numerous works created by artists through that fund, and so I was one of them. And so that commissioned work, I thought that had such that was kind of on similar to where, like, you could take the piece and play it for somebody, and they'll say, like, oh, it's definitely worth getting recorded. Like, this is something I actually had to write and then record and submit back to San Jose Jazz, because eventually they put together a festival that was purely around artists that created those new commissioned works. So, like, there was almost a I don't know, like, but there was some really tangible uh, deadline or tangible, kind of expectation to fulfill. So, like, that was one of the works on the album, the track titled "Our Village."
Yeah.
So that ended up being, I guess, also, I recorded it and thought, all right, this ended up working really well for that purpose. And then even the version of that song that I created and submitted to fulfill the grant, that's not even the version that's on the recording. It actually went through more stages of being kind of tinkered with, um, to then to wind up in its version that it's on the album now.
So what are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from this album?
I think to get a full sort of message of kind of uplifting spirit and um, self confidence, and sort of using the music as the vehicle for kind of bringing about joy in life, and um, sharing that with others, and
Yeah.
basically allowing others to bounce it off of you, so that there's symbiotic joy created, you know from one to another. And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to record it and just you do piano bass drums as a trio. um, that's kind of where my first fascinations with jazz came from. We're listening to, like, the piano trios of Bill Evans and Thelonious Monk, uh, McCoy Tyner, and then later, like, hearing Robert Glasper and Taylor Eichste.
Yeah.
All the piano trio, just kinetic energy, just excited me. And so I always feel like when I play in a trio, it's so intimately communal, because it's just the three of us, and we can really have conversations that everybody, musically gets to contribute to. And so I feel like that's kind of, in the way, the metaphor for the music, is that it's having that interaction, and palpable positive energy, shared among others. That's why I titled it, "It'll Always Work Out." Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, which I dig. Let me ask you this. Take me back to where you were born and raised, and how did these seeds of music and jazz become your destiny, become your world today?
so, born in Madison, Wisconsin, but not so much raised. I
Yeah.
came with my parents to the Bay Area, like, after, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or so. I wasn't very old. So the Bay Area is far more the scene that raised me and then exposed me to jazz music. When I was taking lessons as a kid, I was fortunate enough to have a teacher who was well versed in classical music and jazz music. And probably maybe a year and a half or 2 years into studying with her, she must have noticed something, or saw a spark that she wanted to share jazz music repertoire and concepts from jazz with me. So it wasn't too long after that I just got, completely immersed in wanting to play music that was jazz, wanting to learn about jazz, wanting to um, improvise and essentially, build my book of songs. And so being in the Bay Area led to like um, really important interactions with uh, just a variety of musicians in this scene, and then from musicians who would come from other parts of the country or the globe and come to the Bay Area to be uh, performing or teaching, giving workshops. So, like, I found myself as a teenager at the Stanford Jazz Workshop Program for several years. At one point in the summer, I went to the University of Pacific's Dave Brubeck Jazz Camp. And so it was a lot of these experiences that just really informed me that I wanted to explore this music, you know, for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I played in bands in high school and played in my school's jazz band. Um, and I had a lot of mentors around the Bay Area who were in the jazz scene that provided me, I feel like, a lot of encouragement and confidently just it helped guide me. Really put a lot of opportunities in front of me to help me get better and improve and really authentically live this music as well.
What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away?
First live jazz show. Um, it would have been, well, I know this was the first concert that blew me away that I knew music was it. And I remember seeing Elton John in concert at 5 years
Wow.
old.
Yeah.
So, so I think that had a lot to do with it because Elton John being a piano player and having a lot of blues and rock and, I think a lot of jazz influence in the way like he plays and improvises. I know that made a big impression. I know one of my first like really profound jazz concerts was seeing McCoy Tyner live at Yoshi's. And maybe I was around maybe 9, 10 years old at that point.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a huge spark,
That's heavy
seeing a giant like that.
for sure.
Herbie Hancock in concert, Dave Brubeck in concert, at least a couple times in San Francisco. These all probably like around the times I was between like 10 and 13 years old.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
So, what is it for you after all of this time that gets you up every day, that gets you excited to create this music and to be a part of the jazz community?
It's I mean it's just what I know. It's like it's the language I speak, the best and with the most and with the most joy and the most eagerness, because the thing that has really taught me a lot is that playing this music and then playing it with a lot of like-minded people and meeting people through it is that it it really illustrates the kind of company I want to keep, the kind of community I want to be around, the kind of friends that I treasure. And through writing this music and playing it and recording it and going out and doing shows with another number of different people with jazz music, it's like it's created my village. It's created my um, in a lot of ways, it's created the feeling of family too for me. And it's just been important because the the music is so unique from moment to moment. And like I'll tell different audience members who maybe I talk to at gigs or who have just talk to different musicians is that like I think the kind of music we do is so special because for certain just like moments of incredible like art making, you know so these things aren't always recorded, right? And these things, you had to be there for them. It's kind of what I think about. It's just like it's such a special thing, like, and to do that with whoever was there listening, whoever was there playing it, like that's kind of forever a one of a kind scenario.
Yeah.
So I really relish those kinds of things in my life. And for as often as they happen, I still feel like it doesn't get stale or it doesn't get um, like old habit or anything. I find I find and try to bring like or breathe like newness and fresh qualities to everything I play, my own music or standards or covers of things, as there somebody else's originals. Or I really try to bring and find like that source of what could be new and yet to be experienced each time I go to play.
So, as an educator, molding young minds, based on all of this music from legends that you've seen, all of the recordings that you've done, live shows, being with elders, what do you try to impart and teach the younger generation?
Wow. To find what really speaks to you with it. Um, and yeah, and to allow it to enrich your being. Um, I find with students who I teach, I think the ones who really take that to heart and practice and work on things and ask questions and work at it, they find that they'll get the most reward out of it. I think that it really infuses happiness. I could think of different sort of like teenage students have taught, and the reflection I get back from their parents is that like they've never been more excited and more like happy in their life than when they go to your lesson or they come from your lesson or they're working on things that you've been helping them with. um it's the results, such as that. Or even like and I feel fortunate that I've been able to be an educator and teach nearly every kind of age demographic, from doing things even like with kids who are pre-kindergarten all the way through middle school, high school, college, and adult learners. And if there's just all different kinds of things that result, I think, from working with them, where I can really get a sense of pride that they're having for themselves. And to me, I also feel the same. I feel like a sense of pride and achievement for myself because I I really gave my most sincere efforts to help them achieve their goals in that, and to help them find like what's the true uh the truest element that they connect to
Yeah.
about the music. It's just fulfilling. It's really rewarding. I learn a lot, I feel,
Yep.
from doing this so often.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Why do you love this art form we call jazz?
It's just so unparalleled to other styles of music, and in a lot of ways, I think it's the origin that has helped develop so many other styles. It's definitely helped develop, another style of music that I've been just as much in love with is hip hop music. And so jazz is so responsible for the innovations of that music and R&B and soul and rock and roll and reggae and you know Latin world music from Latin America. Um, it's just I feel like it's had such an imprint on so many other styles, and I really feel grateful that I took the liking and fascination to jazz because it did end up helping me flourish in those styles. Because I've been as a gigging musician and sideman and leader, I found myself in just tons of different stylistic settings where I really just feel so grateful that I had this foundation of both classical and jazz music to then allow me to be effective and a really strong contributor to any number of ensembles that were doing something other than jazz music, but I knew that the foundations there were going to propel me, and help me succeed on that. Um, but I just love it so much because of the dialogue and the democratic art form of it.
Yeah.
I just love that it could really be such an inclusive art form,
Yeah.
and I see it on the levels of just the playing the notes and the interactions musically itself, but also the camaraderie it builds and the kind of connections it allows people to have. It really allows, like, you know, young and old, new and highly experienced, um, players and listeners alike, just to all really, dwell together in unity. It's really beautiful. I think what the power of jazz music just does for humanity.
I agree. Bennett, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, students, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh man. Um, I think I'm someone who uses the piano and music as a vessel for who I can be just as a human being, who I can be to to my family, to my students, um, to my fellow artists and musicians, to just anyone. I feel like I think I sort of act and operate as a person the way I play the piano. So I think I try to act with intention, with with creativity, with humor, with um, empathy, with sensitivity. Um, yeah, to me, I don't feel like my my personality and my approach to playing and approach to writing and creating on the piano are very disconnected. I think in a lot of ways, what I've done musically dictates or has dictated how I communicate and how I interact and relate to people. Um, but overall, man, I'm just I'm an individual who's here to provide more love, less hate in this world overall.
Yeah, I dig it. So it'll always work out is the new album. If anyone wants to pick up a copy, find out about live shows, previous work, anything in your world, where do they go?
They can go to BennettRoth-Newell.com. It's kind of a mouthful, but I can spell it for you as BennetRothNewell.com. They can find the album on all your, you know, popular digital streaming platforms, Spotify and Apple Music. Um, it's also available on this initiative that I've done for the first time in my career. It's called Even, and Even is a pay what you want model that has been supporting artists far more financially fair than some of the other more known digital streaming entities, and it's allowing it's allowing customers to sort of dictate the price. So if they feel like, hey, this album's worth 20 of my dollars, or hey, I check this out, this is worth 200, or like, whatever. It's like it's a basically sliding scale, and it also allows customers and listeners to get access to other things beyond the tracks on the album. So like for me, I've put a couple of different um, live performance videos up from playing different songs on the album, and I've provided sheet music from the songs so
Cool.
that if there's inquiring minds or more more kind of interactive listeners, if you will, that want to check out what the music looks like on paper as they listen, or maybe they want to learn a little bit of the music themselves. If they have that bug, they could do so too through accessing it on Even.
Excellent. I'll put links in the show notes. Bennett, this has been wonderful, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the release, man.
Man, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate all this time, and thank you just for being a spirit in the world of jazz, helping artists one another, and I love what kind of prompts and questions you bring about. I just really appreciate being able to take it a little deeper
Yeah,
with the
I
music
totally,
and with everything.
yeah, totally. I dig it, man. You've been wonderful. Thank you very much. And before